Lagertha from Vikings is one of the most iconic warrior women in television history. Millions watched her lead armies, divorce Ragnar, and rule as queen. The show's creators said they based her on real medieval sources. So I read those sources. The actual medieval account, written 400 years after the Viking Age ended, by a Christian cleric with an agenda, and it tells a completely different story than what made it to the screen. The show makes female Viking warriors look uncommon, but accepted. The medieval source presents Lagertha as proof that pagan society was barbaric, and modern archaeologists just found a female warrior grave that's forcing historians to rethink everything. So which version is true? In the show, Lagertha is Ragnar's first wife, a shield maiden who fights in the shield wall. She divorces Ragnar, becomes earl, then queen. The medieval source, Lagertha tests Ragnar by making him fight a bear and a dog. He divorces her because she tried to kill him with those animals. She later murders her second husband with a spearhead hidden in her dress. One of these is fiction, the other one is closer to reality. Let me show you which one. Vikings premiered in 2013. Lagertha, played by Catherine Winnick, became the breakout character. She's portrayed as Ragnar's equal. She fights in the shield wall during the first raid on England. When Ragnar takes a second wife, she divorces him. She becomes Earl of Hedeby, later Queen of Kattegat. The show treats her warrior status as uncommon but not shocking. Men respect her combat skills. She is a political leader who happens to be female. Articles called her the most powerful woman on television. She became a symbol of female empowerment. They based her on a medieval text called the Gesta Danorum. So, what does that text actually say? The Gesta Danorum, Deeds of the Danes, was written around 1200 by Saxo Grammaticus. He worked for the Archbishop of Lund and wrote to glorify Danish Christian kings. That's roughly 200 years after the Viking Age ended. Imagine someone today writing about the 1800s based entirely on oral tradition. That's the gap we're dealing with. According to Saxo, Lagertha first appears when Norwegian noblewomen grabbed weapons to defend themselves. He describes her as a skilled Amazon who, though a maiden, had the courage of a man. Notice that phrasing. Not, she was courageous. She had the courage of a man. Her gender is the scandalous part. After the battle, Ragnar sends messengers to court her. But Lagertha tests him. She places a bear and a dog at her home's entrance. Ragnar has to kill them both. He thrust one through with a spear and caught the other one by the throat, wrung its neck and choked it. If that sounds more like a fairy tale than history, hold that thought. They marry and have 3 children. They live together for 3 years. Then Ragnar divorces her because she long ago set the most savage beasts to destroy him. He is still mad about the bear and the dog. Years later, when Ragnar faces rebellion, Lagertha responds with a fleet of 120 ships. During the battle, she flies to the rear of the enemy and turns the tide. After this victory, she returns home and murders her second husband. She hides a spearhead in her dress and kills him in his sleep. Saxo writes that she usurped the whole of his name and sovereignty, and calls her a most presumptuous dame. Notice the tone. He's condemning her. She's portrayed as unnatural and morally wrong for seizing power. Because Saxo Grammaticus was a Christian cleric, writing centuries after the Viking Age. His book is propaganda to make Danish kings look good and Norse pagans look barbaric. When Saxo writes about warrior women, he's using them as examples of pagan chaos. The first 9 books of the Gesta Danorum are considered largely fictional. They're legendary sagas, not historical accounts. Most scholars say Lagertha was probably a mythological figure. possibly the goddess Thorgerd mixed with classical Amazon stories. In the late 1800s, archaeologists excavated a grave in Birka, Sweden, located on a prominent hill and buried in a wooden chamber, absolutely packed with military equipment. A sword, an axe, a fighting knife, 2 spearheads, iron bosses from 2 shields, 25 armor-piercing arrows with shafts decorated in silver thread, plus 2 horses, a mare and a stallion. And there's one more critical detail. Sitting in the deceased's lap was a full set of Viking chess pieces, 28 whalebone warriors and 3 walrus ivory dice. In the Viking world, these gaming pieces represented military strategy. This wasn't just a warrior burial, this was a military commander. Not just a fighter, but a tactician who understood strategy and command. For over a century, everyone assumed this was a male warrior. The material culture screamed professional military commander. Then, in 2017, researchers published the DNA analysis. The study, a female Viking warrior confirmed by genomics. The DNA showed no Y chromosome. The skeleton was female, a woman in her 30s or 40s. Not just a warrior, a military strategist, a tactician. The burial wasn't random. Someone carefully arranged these objects. The chess pieces in her lap, the sword by her left hip, the elaborate knife on her right side. She was buried wearing clothing with silver embroidery, fashions from the Eurasian steppe. Next to her skull, a silver cone that decorated a Slavic-style cap. This woman had traveled, and when she died, her community buried her with full military honors. Birka isn't completely alone. Archaeologists have found about a dozen other Viking Age women buried with weapons. In Kopang, Norway, 2 women in a boat grave with spears. In Gerdrup, Denmark, a woman with a spearhead. In Klinta, Sweden, a woman's cremation grave with an axe. But here's the catch. Every single grave is debatable. An axe could be for chopping firewood, a domestic tool. That spear could be a ritual magic staff, not a weapon. Scholars have argued about these graves for decades. Were these women warriors, or were the weapons symbolic? But Birka is different. This wasn't a single axe or a debatable spear. This was a sword, an axe, a knife, 2 spears, 2 shields, 25 arrows, horses, and a full set of gaming pieces. If this burial was just symbolic of family status, they committed hard to the bit. So, what's the actual truth about Lagertha? The TV show? About 80% fiction. It borrowed Lagertha's name and the concept, then invented almost everything else. The medieval source? Also fiction, just older fiction. Written 2 centuries later by a Christian cleric using warrior women as propaganda. Lagertha was probably mythological, based on the goddess Thorgerd, mixed with Amazon stories, filtered through religious bias. But the archaeology? That's real. The Birka grave proves at least one Viking woman held warrior status in the 10th century. Viking women had more legal rights than most medieval European women. Some probably learned weapon skills. And at least one was buried like a military commander. But Viking society was still patriarchal. Warfare was primarily male. The fact that Saxo wrote about Lagertha at all suggests she was remarkable because she was unusual. So here's the uncomfortable reality. Lagertha was probably just a story medieval Christians told about pagan ancestors, filtered through biases, mixed with mythology, shaped by propaganda. But here's what matters. At least one Viking woman held warrior status. At least one was buried with the honors of a military strategist. The TV show got that part right, even if everything else was fiction. The truth is messier than Hollywood, and honestly, that makes it more interesting. If you are here for the history without the bullshit, hit subscribe. Every week I break down what really happened and what we just wished it. I'll see you in the next one.